Isn't it fascinating? Global security is becoming more and more fragile. There's the tension between Trump and Zelensky. And in all of this, crypto is going up. That's not too intuitive, right? We see Hex and PulseChain leading all other cryptocurrencies. Now, is this potentially a long-term turnaround? Or are we going to continue to see what we've seen in the last month? Yes, Hex and PulseX are in the green, but if all of the other assets are continuing to go down, it's very hard for the stronger assets to remain strong. Now, the Hex ecosystem hasn't always had a great time. This is a very long-term chart of Hex. And it's not the US dollar chart, it's a chart relative to Bitcoin. So how much more performance did we get with Hex relative to BTC? And unfortunately, since September of 2021, Hex tended to underperform Bitcoin by 99.6%. Now, it doesn't look like that much on this chart, but that's because this is a logarithmic chart, right? On a linear scale, we do see the absolute value destruction. But yeah, have we finally seen the floor? Does it make sense to potentially buy Hex and PulseChain now? Have a look at this chart here. This is DeFi Llama. It looks at how much capital is currently locked up across various blockchains. And this shows here PulseChain. At one point, the PulseChain ecosystem had almost 1 billion of total value locked. Now we are at 350 million. Now, a lot of this volatility actually comes from price volatility, not necessarily from in and outflows from the blockchain. When we look at the same chart measured in PLS, it's much more constant. Unfortunately, with that chart, we also see that since beginning of the year, PulseChain gets less and less adoption. The long-term, somewhat positive trend seems to have turned around. And of course, a lot of this is also related to Richard Hart, the founder of the Hex ecosystem, that now gets searched by Interpol, by the international police. So here's the news at the end of 2022. Hex crypto founder Richard Hart with Interpol red notice. And that's because of apparent tax evasion. And that's of course a problem for the growth of the ecosystem. Now have a look at this. This is the net cumulative flow of the PulseChain bridge. So how much capital is actually getting bridged to PulseChain and how much capital gets withdrawn. So on this chart, we do not see the price fluctuations of those assets. We simply see direct deposit and withdrawal activity. And we haven't seen much growth in the last 1.5 years, roughly. And that's the problem of PulseChain. There is no growth, and PulseChain has a lot of risk, obviously. Additional risk has to be compensated with additional return. If we don't get that long term, it doesn't make sense to take on the risk. Now let's have a look at valuations. So PulseChain, or the PLS token, has a fully diluted valuation of 6.6 billion. This compares to Aptos, which has a similar fully diluted valuation of 7.3 billion. Now, how much activity is on both chains? The trading volume on PulseChain in the last 24 hours was around 100 million. The trading volume on Aptos was only 37 million. We've already looked at the total value locked of PulseChain, 350 million. That compares to 990 million of Aptos. So it seems like the valuation is somewhat in line with competitors, right? In other words, there is more trading activity happening on PulseChain, but there is less capital. Aptos is used more for investing. PulseChain is more used for short-term transactions, potentially speculation. But really, here's how I think about this fundamentally. When we look at the entire market, it's not really that encouraging to buy now those risky altcoins. And that's because it's very hard to find the outperformers. Who says that Hex and PulseChain that's currently doing okay will continue to do okay? When we just look at those return numbers on the right? In the last 7 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, there are very few assets that perform still okay. Most assets are down massively. And it doesn't necessarily look like that this will change anytime soon because valuations are still high. We are going down, but we are still in the grand scheme of things comparatively high. Have a look at this long-term Bitcoin chart. Isn't it fascinating how those bottoms align relatively well and also how the tops align pretty well? Now those are simply just curved lines. There's nothing mathematical about this, but still we have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 data points that all align on a single curved line. And we just look at this trend, the potential risk for Bitcoin of a drop of say more than 50% versus a potential reward of maybe 30%, it's not really that great. And of course, if Bitcoin suddenly starts falling to 70k, 60k, 50k, maybe even 40k, then the altcoins won't have a great time either. And so I've been talking about this for quite a while on this channel, and I have acted upon this information. Here, have a look at this. This is a premium update video published on the 25th of February. I am selling aggressively. The bear market might have just started. So that happened before we got this massive correction. And again, maybe we are just starting, right? Maybe we go lower. Here's the problem with the altcoins right now. Altcoin rally, or the outperformance of altcoins in general in the grand scheme of things, tends to happen when Bitcoin is at a very high dominance level. So when most of crypto is simply just Bitcoin. We need to be at extremely depressed levels for altcoins to make them become an attractive deal. We have to be at Bitcoin dominance levels of around 70%, and we are not there yet. We are only at 61%, and it might still take several months until we are at those high levels again. That's why I personally like to short the altcoins. I bet on falling altcoins, and so do the premium members of this channel. I'm getting a lot of messages recently of premium members that sold early and that are now making money with short positions, with betting on falling prices of various altcoins. I'm not sure if it makes sense to short specifically Hex or PulseChain, but there are definitely some altcoins that are very constantly underperforming now the rest of the market, and those are shorting. So if you're finally learning from all of this and you don't try anymore to pick the needle in the haystack, but instead you simply just bet on the haystack doing worse than the rest, right? You bet on falling prices of all of those bad altcoins. If you want to get into this a bit more seriously, if you want to have a proper strategy around this, proper risk management, proper platforms, everything around that, then feel free to become part of our winning group as well. So this is the premium membership. It's currently $125 per month, and there's also a 1-week money back guarantee. So in case you don't like premium, in case you don't feel like you've learned anything, there are more than 100 tutorial videos over there. If you don't like it, just message me within the first 7 days and I'll refund you 100%. There's really zero risk. There is a money back guarantee. Looking forward to seeing you here again on YouTube. Feel free to subscribe. I publish videos regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. And of course, see you also in premium. Cheers.